Theron Sanai. I was a bit ill during last week, therefore I may disturb you while doing the sermon by coughing. Excuse me for that. Last time we were talking about the ego, how the ego is arisen, and how the ego controls you, controls your happiness, thoughts, your life. Today we will talk about its identity. Actually, yesterday in our Sinhalese sermon, we discussed it a lot. Ego's identity. For some of you, we can go through it again. For others, you can learn. And again, I want you to study this while you are listening to this. I want you to put into your life experiences, and try to say, try to observe your behaviors, your life. Then you will realize what has happened to you. And you will, perhaps with merits, you will see the path to come out of that. Otherwise you will be stuck, like you have been stuck. You all know that you want to do something, but you do another thing. Because you have to do all these things. Sometimes you don't need to do these things, but you have to do these things. That means you became a slave to your own mind, but I can't say that's not the mind. That's the ego. You became a slave to the ego. Therefore you can't come out of that. You are stuck there. You try to find a life, but you can't. I know that you need a life, a new life. You wish for a life because you know that you are suffering. You are vexed. You try to find new ways, new methods. Perhaps you think that if I were younger, you have regrets. You always try to find alternatives because you know that this is not the life you wanted. This is not the life you like. Because the life is ruined because of your wantings. You can't stop them. Your wantings are killing you. It is eating you alive. You have to fulfill them. But by fulfilling them, you can't have anything. It's like pouring water to an empty vessel. But you pour it. You pour water into it. You have to, you can't stop. Because you really believe in that. You think that you can fill in, but you can't. But you try because you can't stop it. You try and try and try. One day you will die. Then you can say try and try, one day you can die. Not fly. Because it's empty and it is a hollow vessel, as a Janma. It has a hole, puncture in it. You can't fill it. But you try. The only way to come out of this is the Dhamma. Realization. Realization. You need to realize the truth. You need to realize your life. You need to realize nature. In this case, today we will discuss about the ego and its identity. You all know that you have your identity. If I ask you, are you a woman or a man? You would say, answers. You would say, I'm a woman. Then I would ask, how do you know that? Then you can say that, I have a woman's body. Okay, that's good. Therefore you think that you are a woman. Therefore you think that you are a man. Because you have a woman's or man's body. That means now you can see one thing. When the ego is created, try to understand this. This is really important. If you can understand this, you will realize the world. And at the same time, I want you to understand this. And if you can understand that, please don't stay in this life. I want you to change. Otherwise, I will be like a bull in a china shop. I will break everything, your mind patterns, your lifestyle, but nothing happens. If you can understand that, I want you to practice. I want you to come out of this life and practice, especially young people. I want you to decide something. If you can understand this, I don't force you. If you can understand this. If you can understand this, you must practice. Because most can't understand this. Most people can't understand this because they don't have enough merits to understand that. They can listen to us, they can understand English, but they can't apply that into their life because they don't have enough merits. But I definitely know that you all have enough merits to understand this. Therefore, if you can, I would say, in case if you understand this. Okay? Is that okay? Right? I want you to practice and I want you to change your life. Because if you know that in current ways, current life situations, all these things are wrong, then if you continue to do that, if you continue your lifestyle, if you continue your life as it is, it's madness. Therefore, I want you to understand. I will preach to you until you understand that. I will preach to you until you realize that. With that, one day you will understand and you will change your life. If you change your life, that will be your first victory. If you can promise me that, we will continue. Otherwise, this will be another seminar, another speech. You come here, I come here, we will talk. And you think that, oh, that speech was really good. That facts are really good. They are true. That's it. That's not enough. I preach to you to make you monks and nuns. That's the only purpose of this sermon. If I preach you, I want you to become monks and nuns. I don't ask you to wear this in your mind. Because if you realize that, you have to become a monk. Because you can't have a lay life anymore. If you can realize this. Well, I can prove that. I can show you about your life, about your decisions you have made so far, how wrong they are. I can show that. Let's go ahead. When the ego is created, I will draw we know that first of all the mind is created. It's also a process. In previous sermons we have talked about that. It's a process. First of all, Rupa is created. I use Pali terms for these things. I have explained all these things. Rupa is created, then Vedana, then Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana. This is the Rupa, which means if you see this, you see a color. Color is the Rupa. Because color is not in the world, color is created in your mind. Therefore, when the process of the Chitta begins, Rupa must be created. If you see something, that means color is created. If you hear something, a sound is created. If you smell something, smell is created. Therefore, first of all, something should be created. That is the Rupa. When the Rupa is created, it comes to the perception. Vijnana is called perception. It comes to the perception. This process is called the mind. This process is called the mind. Now you can see the mind is a process. All these things are energy. A type of energy. In the future we will talk about them. Now you should understand that the mind is a process. It's not an object or it's not a machine. The mind is a process. It starts from Rupa and it comes to the perception. It comes to the perception. That means, let's assume that this is blue color, then blue color is created, then blue color is perceived. This is called mind. This is the purpose of the mind. To perceive something. That is the purpose. There is only one purpose. To perceive something. When a sound is created, it should be perceived. That's called mind. That's the mind. The mind doesn't have any wanting. Because if there is a wanting, there should be attachment. Due to attachment, a wanting is created. Due to attachment. If attachment is involved, then a wanting is created. Now here you can't see any attachment. You can't see ignorance here. No ignorance, no attachment. Only a process. This is very pure. I would say this is the purest process in the world. This doesn't have suffering. This doesn't have vexation. This is pure. And if you want, you can say, this is happiness. But you can't, if I can say this is happiness, but you can't perceive it. Because if you want to perceive or if you want to sense something, there should be a difference. If you want to sense something, there should be a difference. You can only detect a difference. That's why when you have a headache, you can feel it. When the headache is cured, at that instant, you can feel it. After that, you can't feel. Can you feel your brain right now? Brain means head. Can you feel your head right now? No? Because you don't have a headache. Perhaps when you have a headache, you remind to yourself that I have a head. Other than that, we can't feel our head. We know that there is a head on our shoulder. We know that, but we feel our head when we have a headache. And when the headache is cured, then we feel something. Other than that, we can't feel anything. We can't feel our palm. If you pinch, now you feel it. That's how it is. All the time, we can sense the difference. But here, you can't see any difference. Because happiness is the natural state of your mind. Therefore, if you are looking for happiness, then you can't feel it. Only one time you will feel happiness, ladies and gentlemen. That's when you get enlightened. When you get enlightened, you will feel happiness. The Buddha also felt the same thing. That's why he said, Udana. That means he said something happily. Aneka jati sansarang. The Buddha said that stanza happily because he felt happiness for the first time, actually, and the last time. That's happiness. After that, his mind had been on the happiness, but can't sense because no any differences. This is happiness. Then if you can experience this, then you are in happiness. That means you have achieved happiness. Other than that, if you try to achieve happiness, then you never achieve happiness and you will achieve only pleasure. Pleasure comes after reduction of vexation. You can reduce vexation by doing what your mind wants, then you will feel happiness, but that is not happiness, that is called pleasure. It occurs due to reduction of vexation. Therefore, if you can vex yourself, and you can have pleasure. If you can vex yourself even more, then you can have more pleasure. This is how it is. If your daughter is kidnapped, and when they send her home, you will feel happiness. But if you think that that's happiness, that comes through your tears. If you want to get that happiness again, then you have to pay someone to kidnap your daughter. Because you need to be vexed, ladies and gentlemen. Try to understand that. Put into your life, then you will see that. But people like to play with this. People like to hurt themselves. They hurt themselves first. After that, they relieve themselves. Then they will feel pleasure. This is what they do. They don't want to battle because they like that pleasure. They think that the world is pleasurable. They think that everything is pleasurable and they will achieve permanent happiness because they think that happiness, that pleasure is happiness. But it's not happiness. It's pleasure. But if you think that it's happiness, then you try to make it permanent. Then you try to find ways which you won't find, because you have been doing that. But still, you are finding. Still, you are searching for. You never find it. You never find it because there is no such thing called happiness in that way. Once you achieve your salvation, once you become an arahant, you will feel happiness. After that, your mind will be staying happiness, a state of happiness. Then you don't have to do anything to reduce your vexation, because vexation won't be created. I'll show you how the vexation is created. This is the process of the mind, completely harmless, and its original state is happiness. Now let's go back to the problem. This is not the problem. This is only for perception. When something happens in the universe, then energy changes occurs. Then when energy change occurs, then you can say it should be perceived. That is called consciousness. If you use another word, this is called consciousness. Consciousness is there not to get married, not to make a house, not to have a society, not to have children. Consciousness is there to perceive something. That is called consciousness. Here we are talking about consciousness. This is consciousness. But when we talk about consciousness, you can't say that whose consciousness is that, mine or yours. Whose consciousness is that? When we talk about consciousness, whose consciousness? But the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, due to ignorance and attachment, we always try to separate them. Therefore, we have words, we use words to separate the world. This is a pen, and this is a cube, and this is a table, and this is a whiteboard. Then, so on. We use those words to separate the world. Likewise, when we talk about consciousness, then you have a problem. Whose consciousness is that? Automatically, a question is created in your mind. Whose consciousness is that? We can't name consciousness. No one can own consciousness. Consciousness is only, it's only one thing in the world, essentially, consciousness. It's consciousness. That means it has a power, it has an ability to perceive something. That is called consciousness. It happens here. It happens here. It happens over there. It happens here. Consciousness. A mind is created with the help of the body. If we destroy the body, the process stops, and it will happen somewhere else. When the environment is there, consciousness is created. Now, in that case, you can see this is not the problem, because this doesn't have any suffering. You can see that, no suffering, no vexation. You don't have any problem with perception. Perhaps you have a problem with vexation, suffering. Therefore, let's find out about that. That happened due to ignorance, according to the Buddha. Due to ignorance. Due to ignorance, attachment is created. Because of the attachment, wanting is created. You can say wanting. Wanting is created, and vexation is created. This is very important. Vexation is created. When vexation is created, there is a safety mechanism in the mind, and it is activated, and it reduces the vexation. When the level of vexation increases, it has a safety mechanism. Everyone has that. If someone hurts you a lot, you will go mad. That also happens due to this safety mechanism. If you go to a mental hospital, you will see many people. Some people hurt them. And they couldn't tolerate. That means level of vexation increased. No one is there to calm them down. Everybody wanted to get something out of them. And they insulted them. And finally, the level of vexation increased. And the safety mechanism is activated forever. But for all of us, this is activated up to a certain level. Therefore, we also see illusions. When someone goes mad, they can see illusions. They can see a baby out of this pen. Actually, they can see. When we see this, we see a pen. When they see it, they see perhaps a baby, perhaps a gemstone. We all see a pen. Therefore, we name them as mad people. They are mad. They are insane. We all can see a pen. Therefore, we all are safe. We all are safe. Don't worry about that. We all are safe because this is a pen. And this is a human being. Therefore, we all are, because you all can see a human being here, therefore you all are safe. Don't worry about that. I won't send you into a mental hospital. Because you all can see. If you all can see, that's fine, ladies and gentlemen. What do you think? If you all can see that, that's fine. Even though we are mad, that's fine. Because we all can see that. A mad person can marry a mad person, that's fine. They are okay with that. That's what happened to this world. Everybody is mad. No one can deny. Everybody is mad. If you can see a person out of this body, you are mad, because there isn't a man here. But when do you realize that? When do you see actually what it has? But that is your target, and you will achieve that with the Dhamma. That way you will see the same thing, but you will perceive differently. You will perceive as it is. But now you have a wrong perception. Here I have a body and a mind. A mind is created. It's a process. It happens over and over again. That's how colors are perceived. Colors are perceived. I can't say that I can see colors. Colors are perceived. Because consciousness is created all the time. Now you can see there is a body and consciousness. Consciousness that is created, that is being created. If you think about right now, it is being created. Apart from that, you can't see a man. You can't see something fixed here. But when you see, you perceive a person. You think that a person is there. That means you have a wrong perception. We need to correct that, because that's the problem we have. I will explain how that it happened. Now you can see vexation is created due to this. Now, if the limit of vexation increases, it has a safety mechanism to decrease it. But that is very dangerous, ladies and gentlemen. In Buddhism, the Buddha said, that is karma. You have heard about karma. That is where karma occurs. This is called karma, which means abhisankara. Abhisankara. Karma. Lifting this pen is not karma. It's an action. There is a huge difference between an action and a karma. Karma happens due to vexation. When the mind is vexed, karma happens. Now tell me, how many types of karma can happen in Arahant's mind? How many? Arahant's mind? None. None. Why? Because in Arahant's mind, there is no ignorance, no attachment, no vexation. If vexation is not there, it doesn't have to reduce. Karma occurs to reduce vexation. That is the safety mechanism. Therefore, Arahant's mind uses vipaka to be created. Khinang purana navannatti sambhava. That's why it said that. Vipaka is used, but newly vipaka is not created. Because newly karma is not occurred. Because it doesn't have vexation. Now, safety mechanism is activated and vexation decreases. To reduce the vexation, the mind sees an illusion. If mind wanted something, that will be seen here. That is called jati. That's called jati. This is not national. This is jati. Jati means a false sensation or false sense of existence. Because mind was ignorant because the mind thought, or mind thinks, I can't say thought, mind thinks that everything is separated in this world. Everything is separated. Everything is unique. Everything is unique. They have unique characteristics. Nothing is the same. This is how the mind knows about the world, knows about nature. Therefore, the mind attached, or the mind gets attached to that idea. Now, attachment is there. The mind wants to experience that. That is the wanting. Now the mind wants to experience uniqueness, separateness. But it can't experience that because nature is not separated. Nature is the same. You can't find any separated object in this world. Even though it seems everything is separated, nothing is separated. You can't see through your eyes. So you can't see by your eyes. you need to achieve wisdom to see that. If you can see it in your naked eyes, then you won't be suffering anymore. No one will be suffering. But everybody is suffering in this world because they don't have the eye of wisdom. That's why we need to listen to the Dhamma and practice the Dhamma to have the eye of wisdom. Then we will practice with the eye of wisdom until we attain Nibbana. Now in this case, now there is a wanting. The mind wants to experience separateness, uniqueness. It can't, therefore, level of vexation increases. It increases up to a certain level. After that, the mind has that safety mechanism that we were talking about before. Then it was activated and now it sees what it wanted. First of all, it feels itself. That means the mind, which means that process, feels that it's an entity. It's unique. It's unique from others. It's unique and it is separated. That's the first thing it feels. That's called jati. In English, it's called the ego. Now let's talk about this. When the ego is created, now the ego feels that it's an entity, it's a being, or it's unique, it's separated. It's an entity. If this is an entity, tell me its identity, please. What's this identity? It is created. It is born right now. We can't say it was born. It is born. It is born. A newly born baby. Tell me its identity. It doesn't have any identity, ladies and gentlemen, but it feels that it's an entity. If you know any entity that doesn't have identity, please tell me. Apart from this. If something is an entity, it should have an identity. Without an identity, nothing can be an entity. This monastery is an entity. It has an identity. You are an entity. But for the time being we will take, you are an entity, therefore you have an identity. But what about this? The ego. Now it is born. It is created. But it doesn't have an identity. Therefore, it always seeks for identity, ladies and gentlemen. That's why it is identified with everything. First of all, it wants a figure, a body, a face. Then if I ask, show yourself, what would you show me? This? If I ask you to show yourself, show yourself, you show this? A book. What would you show me? Your face. That means this ego needs a face. Some identity. Your face is your identity, ladies and gentlemen. That's how you believe, at least. Here we are talking about your life. Try to understand this. When the ego is created, it wants its identity. It doesn't have any identity because it's a thought. It is created in your mind. It is not a being. Can you imagine that, ladies and gentlemen? This is created in your mind, and your mind has a false sense of existence. This is called ego. It's sense. It's mind-made. It's a fantasy. But alas, it wants, but now it feels that it's an entity, therefore it wants its identity. But it can't have any identity, therefore it wants to find a body. Therefore it finds the nearest body to the mind. What is the nearest body to the mind? This. Now it found a body. That's how you identify yourself with your body. But that is really dangerous, ladies and gentlemen. When something happens to this body, what will happen? You will suffer. If someone pinch you, then you feel that someone pinched you. When someone pinched your body, you feel that someone pinched you. Because each time the mind is created, it is identified with the body. It wants its identity, then it takes the body as its identity. Therefore, each time you think about yourself, this will be your face. When you wake up early in the morning, you go and see yourself. Yeah? You go to the mirror and you see yourself. Can you see yourself? You only see this flesh. This is flesh, ladies and gentlemen. This is something which is created with flesh and bone. This is not you. Then who are you? If this body is not you, then who are you? Tell me, where are you here? This? Is this you? No, this is ego. A false sense of existence. This is not you. This happens in the mind due to ignorance and attachment. If ignorance and attachment is eradicated, then ego won't be created. Then who are you? There is no such thing called you, ladies and gentlemen. There is no such thing called I. Try to understand this. But you feel that. You perceive that because of that wrong perception. That wrong perception happens due to ignorance and attachment. That's why the Buddha asks us to eradicate ignorance and attachment. That's why we should practice. Otherwise, when the ego is created, it will be identified with everything. Everything. First of all, it takes the body. It takes the body and it wastes your life after that. When it takes your body as its identity, now you feel that this body is you. I can't say yours. Actually, you feel that this is me. This is I. Therefore, you spend your every penny to protect this, make it beautiful, make it healthy. You do all these things by thinking that I need to look after myself. Tell me please. To look after yourself, what have you done so far? To look after yourself. You try to look after yourself. Yeah? To look after yourself, what have you done? You comb your hair. To look after yourself. To make your body healthy. Look after yourself. Other than that, what have you done? Because you thought that this body is you. Therefore, you wanted to protect this, and you spent everything what you have, you earned and spent to make this body beautiful, because that's you. If you want to show yourself to someone, then you go to a beauty parlor first, and you put some makeup, and you come back and show yourself, this is me. And when you have a disease, then you are suffering, because you thought that you were sick. Now let's come to a dangerous disease. When you have cancer, tell me. Actually, first of all, I ask this question. Can you have cancer? My other question will make the last one easy. Can the body have cancer? Yes. Cancer means growing cells. That's cancer. There is a mechanism to stop growth in the cell, but that mechanism is dysfunction. Therefore, the growth occurs. That's cancer. The body can have cancer, but can you have cancer? No. Why? Can you have cancer? Why? Why? Because there is no such thing called you to have cancer. There is only two things. One is the mind, other one is the body. There are many diseases in the body and mental diseases as well. We can have many mental diseases because the mind exists and the body exists. Apart from that, nothing exists. Therefore, if you think that you can have cancer, that's false. That's false, but you will feel that due to the ego. When the ego is created, the ego is identified with the body. Then, when something happens to the body, then you think that you means the ego again. Then you think that you have cancer. Then when you think that you have cancer, then your life is over. You will suffer forever. Whenever you are sick, you suffer mentally as well. Because you feel that you are sick, but you are not. It happens due to this. The ego is identified with the body. Then how can you win this situation? There is only one way, ladies and gentlemen. You can't separate ego from your body. You can't separate the ego from your body. Because when it is created, it needs the identity. Therefore it finds something. Have you heard about ghosts? Perhaps you won't believe, but you have heard about ghosts. Okay. That means when a person dies, he should be reborn. Then, that means again, the process of the mind occurs, ladies and gentlemen. We can't stop that. It happens all the time. Until you pass into Parinibbana, it happens. It needs a body. The mind needs a body to occur. Therefore, when you die, again the mind is created with another body. Then that mind comes to the stage of ego. It will come to this point eventually. Then it needs the identity. To find the identity, it finds a body. That's why a ghost also has a very subtle body. Perhaps you have seen like the smoke. A very subtle body. If it is not enough, it tries to possess and find a little bit harder, thick body. That's why some people are possessed by ghosts. Whether you believe it or not, this happens. We can explain through the Dhamma. Because it needs an identity. But it has a subtle body. And that when it comes to ego, the ego is identified with that body. Therefore, if you take a ghost, if you take a human being, if you take a god, if you take a Brahma, if you take an animal, everybody has the same thing. This is the truth of the world. That's why everybody needs a body to identify. There is one set of Brahma, which is called Arupa Brahma. They don't need a body to be identified. They can identify themselves with the mind. That's why they are called Arupa. They don't have form. They are formless. Other than that, every other person, every other being needs a body to be identified. Therefore, you have a body now. You can be identified with that, and you can spend your entire life to protect this body and deal with this body. That's why you spend a lot to keep your body healthy and beautiful and handsome. Think about that, then you will realize. Because you want the ego, I would say, the ego wants to be identified with this. Now, if this body is too short, what will happen to the ego? Its identity is inferior. Therefore, it wants to find something else. If this body is too thin or obese, so on, now it feels so inferior perhaps. But the mind wants to, the ego wants to be superior. But the only identity it gets is not enough to be superior. You all know that everybody wants to be beautiful, everybody wants to be so strong. But if you feel so weak, now you collapse. Because your identity is not enough for you to be superior. Therefore, you try to make other things. You try to have a good education and try to be identified with it, with your PhD. Actually, that's the reason you learned, ladies and gentlemen. That's the only reason. Because then you can identify with that. Doctors, if someone call you a nurse, I would say, what do you feel? A consultant, if someone call you a doctor, just a doctor and consultant. Yeah? I can't say small step, but there's a big step, but both of them are doctors. But if someone calls, doctor, with that word, the ego finds its identity, ladies and gentlemen. The ego finds its identity with the word, because it heard. Now the ego becomes a doctor. But it is supposed to be a consultant. Therefore, it gets angry. It gets angry, ladies and gentlemen. That's how you feel this anger, resentment with other people. When you feel so inferior, you can't tolerate that. Therefore, sometimes you try to change it. I'm not a doctor, I'm a consultant. I'm not a nurse, I'm a doctor. I'm not a teacher, I'm a principal. I'm the principal of this school. Perhaps your name is Jane. Then I would, someone calls you Camilla. I'm not Camilla. Because you don't want to be identified with another name, ladies and gentlemen. That's why perhaps you were taught that if you use someone's name, you have to spell it correctly or you have to pronounce it correctly. Otherwise, they will be offended. That's why when I preach to you, I try to be more careful, because you will be offended. You will be offended because you try to identify, or you try to be identified with every word I utter here. If I say, you are a donkey, then suddenly, with that word, or you are stupid, it's so dangerous if I use, you are stupid. Because you try to find your identity in that word. Because that's the thing you heard. When the ego is... Can you understand what I'm saying? When the ego is created, it wants something to be identified with. It needs something. When you hear something, that's the only thing you have to be identified with. Therefore, when you hear the word stupid, then which means the ego is identified with that word. At that time, you feel so inferior. Therefore, you fight back or be offended. That's why people fight every day, ladies and gentlemen. That's why you have to be very careful when you use words. That's why you have to be very careful when you associate with other people. Because each and every word you utter can be identified with their ego. Everything you see, because the ego is destitute. I'm telling you. This is destitute, ladies and gentlemen, destitute. Hopeless. Because it is born empty-handed. It doesn't have anything. Just imagine that a baby was born without anything. He doesn't have a mother. He doesn't have a father. Let's assume that it was born out of thin air. It's destitute. This ego is also the same. Perhaps you think that you have wealth. You have a wealth. You have a lot of money. But the ego is created. The ego is born without even a penny. Let's take the richest person in the world. In that mind, the ego is created. With how much money? The ego is created with how much money? Tell me the amount. Because he is the richest person in the world. The ego is created with how much? $2 billion, perhaps. Nothing. Let's take a PhD holder. Perhaps he has 10 PhDs. Okay. The ego is created. With how many PhDs? What about knowledge? Nothing. As soon as it is created, it wants to find its identity. Therefore, the very first thing it does is find a face. It finds a face. That's why you always feel the body as you. And if it is not enough, actually it's not enough because everybody has a body. Therefore, you need to find something else to be identified with. Therefore, you will add or acquire more things. That's why from the beginning, from your childhood, from your birth, you try to acquire things. First of all, you try to acquire knowledge. That's why when you're a small baby, you try to look everywhere and try to identify all these things. That's knowledge. Then you can say that I know this. I know this. I know this. The ego can be identified with that thought. I know this. This is so destitute, ladies and gentlemen. It takes anything to be identified there. Therefore, don't ever think that anyone is happy in this world. Don't ever think that anyone is successful in this world. I can guarantee no one is successful in this world unless they are arahant. If you want, you can go ahead. Or you can change your life. I have changed my life by seeing these things. Even though you have every property in the world, if you are the owner of this world, let's assume that you are the king, you are the empire of the entire earth. The ego is created empty-handed. And it has to find its identity. What's the point, ladies and gentlemen? What's the point in having all these things? How much money do you want? How many properties you are going to buy? Nothing happens. If something happens, if there is a limit, that's fine. I will help you to achieve that. I will help you, or if I have knowledge, I will give you that. How many marriages do you want to do? To think that you have a wife. When this is created, does it have a wife? We are talking about a wife. But it's so desperate to find an identity first, a face. But after that, when it feels that I have everything, now I need a beautiful wife. Why? Why do you need a beautiful wife? Gentlemen, just answer this question, please. Why do you need a beautiful wife? Because this is so desperate and so destitute, the ego. The ego wants to be identified with that beauty. Then it can say, I have a beautiful wife, or my wife is more beautiful than yours. Therefore, I am superior than you. I'm talking about the society, ladies and gentlemen. You have seen all these things. You have seen all these things. When it comes to a marriage, people only talk about wealth, education, and beauty. Wealth, education, and beauty. Why do they consider about education? Then they can be identified with that. My daughter-in-law is a doctor. Then why do you use your daughter-in-law to be identified with? Because I'm nothing. That's the truth. Because I'm the ego. I was born empty-handed. And always I have to find something. I have to find my identity. I'm so desperate. I'm so destitute. Therefore, I need something. Mothers, that's why you want your children to have a good education. This is the truth. If you can ask from yourself. This is the truth. You need it, or you need your children to have a good education. Then one day you can be superior to other people by identified with that. You know that when a exam, let's assume that when O-levels result comes, what happens? A-level results comes, what happens? Somebody hide themselves. Somebody comes to the society and be identified with children's results. You know what my son's results are? they talk about that. That's why you want a rank. That's why you push your children to get a rank. Perhaps you don't think about their mind. Parents don't want to think about that. They are so desperate to be identified with something big, because they feel so inferior, because perhaps they are poor. Poor or rich, the ego is always identified with that. Then if you are poor, if you are poor, then the ego is identified with poor. Then you feel that you are poor. If you are rich, then the ego is identified with rich. That thought. Then it feels that it's rich. That's how you feel, that you are rich or you are poor. That's how you feel that you are an anagarika. That's how I feel that I'm a monk. Otherwise, by seeing the ego, can you tell the occupation? No. Ego is the same. Ego is created here, here, and here, wherever it is. If ignorance and attachment is there, the ego is created. That ego is the same. Therefore, the ego needs a face to be separated. Now you have your body, and I have my one. Therefore, now we are separated. We are separated because of bodies, not because of the ego. Now you are identified with your body, I am identified with my body, therefore now you are separated from me. If everybody means the ego is created in everybody, in every body, because the mind is created. Therefore, now the ego is the same, but the ego is identified with different bodies. Therefore, now we all are different. Not only that, the ego can be identified with your occupation. Therefore, you are a doctor, an engineer, a teacher, a principal, whoever it is. And anagarikas, monks, sila sravakas, sravikas, siluvasis, upasakas, upasikas. There are many. Or thieves. If you steal, to become a thief, what should you do? You just need to steal. If you steal, now the ego is identified with that karma or the action. Then you feel that you are a thief. This is how it works. This is how your life works, ladies and gentlemen. This is how you think. Perhaps you think that you are a wife of someone, a husband of someone. The ego. That's one of your identities. How can you come out of this then? Now you can see that you have to live in this. You have been living. And how can you come out of that? If I teach you how to come out of this, will you do that? Have you seen that this is the biggest problem, biggest issue? If the ego is identified with everything, then you suffer. That's why you have to suffer with ideas, with views. I'll explain to you. When you have a view regarding something, and at the same time the ego is also created, and the ego is identified with that view, then that view becomes your view. Then someone else also has another view. Then that mind is also identified with the view. Now there are two views and two people. One is superior, the other one is inferior. But both of them want to be superior. Therefore, you fight. You fight to choose the correct view. That's why you argue with others. You have your own opinion. How can it be your own opinion? Because actually that's not your opinion. That opinion is you. Because the ego is identified with the opinion. You all know that the ego needs an identity. Therefore, the ego is identified with that opinion or the view. That's why perhaps at your home you always fight with your children, with your spouse, because you have your own opinion. First of all, at the beginning it was just an opinion. But after the chain reaction, someone is in jail. Can you fill in the gap? There is a view, there is an opinion. After that, after all the incidents and reactions happen, someone is in jail. If you go to jail, if you go to the jail and if you discuss with them, then you will find out they became prisoners due to an opinion. There was an opinion. At the same time, the ego was created. Then ego wanted an identity. Then the ego is identified with the opinion. Then opinion became that person. Then someone insulted that opinion. Therefore, he was so angry and he couldn't bear anger and he stabbed. Finally, he's in jail. From today, I want you to apply this into your life. I want you to be vigilant about your behaviors. Perhaps today, when you go home, or perhaps when you are on the road, you will start arguing with your friends or spouse. At that time, you should realize that there is a view, there is an opinion, just an opinion. But the ego is identified with that. Then you can't control anger. But people want, actually, the problem is, everybody wants to control their anger. Everybody wants to control their lustful feelings. They don't like anger. They don't like lustful feelings. But the problem is, how can you control all these things if the ego is created? This is the root, ladies and gentlemen. That's why the Buddha asked us to eradicate this. That's why the Buddha said, this is the only problem we have. We need to eradicate the ego. We need to eradicate the ignorance. Otherwise, how can you eradicate anger? Anger is created. Because if you feel inferior, there are two things. You have to do one of two things. One is be patient. Be patient means you are burning inside. You hurt yourself. Perhaps you will go mad one day. Because you didn't express that. How long can you do that? You can be patient. For how long? Then you will say that there is a limit for my anger. In Sinhalese we say. Of course, there is a limit. There is a limit. If the anger goes beyond that, then you will do something. But until that, you suffer. That's the problem. You can save the society, you can be a good human being, but you suffer. Do you think that is the salvation? You suffer, but you don't want to hurt other people? Is that the salvation you are looking for? No, you don't have to suffer. If you don't suffer, you never hurt other people. Therefore, there is only one way. You need to eradicate the ego. This is the only way, ladies and gentlemen. If you want, you can try any other ways, but this is the only way. This is the root. To eradicate this, we need to eradicate ignorance. To eradicate ignorance, we should know about these things. If we don't know about these things, that is ignorance. When someone asks the Buddha about ignorance, he said, dukkhe aññānaṁ, dukkha samudaya aññānaṁ, dukkha nirodhe aññānaṁ, dukkha nirodha gāminiya patipadāya aññānaṁ. Dukkhe aññānaṁ. The Buddha said dukkha. Dukkha means the ego. That's not suffering. The ego. Dukkhe aññānaṁ. People don't know about the ego because people think that this is I. But that is not I. That is the ego. Ego is a false sense of existence. But I is fixed. That's how you feel. Your I is fixed. Not this I. Yourself, that is fixed. But this is not fixed. This is created. This is formed. This is manifest. If you know about this, you know the first noble truth. If you don't know about this, that is ignorance. Dukkhe aññānaṁ. If you know about this, that is called dukkhe ñānaṁ. That means you have achieved wisdom of dukkha. That means you came to know about dukkha. This is dukkha. Mental pain is not dukkha. That is suffering. The ego is dukkha. Then if you don't know about ego, now you have ignorance, that means dukkhe aññānaṁ. Then dukkha samudaya aññānaṁ. What is the reason of the ego? The reason of the ego is attachment. Then if someone doesn't know about attachment, that means the reason, cause, the cause of suffering, he is ignorant. Oh, that is ignorance. Dukkha nirodhe aññāna. When you eradicate ignorance, This will be eradicated if you don't know about this process. You are ignorant, or that is ignorance. Dukkha nirodha gaminiya patipadaya aññāna. There is a way, there is a path to eradicate the ego. If you don't know about that path, that is ignorance. This is not hard, ladies and gentlemen. By discussing about the ego, actually we always discuss about the first noble truth. Because that is the first thing you should achieve. Perhaps we will talk about this for 100 years. However, you should understand the first noble truth, because when you understand the first noble truth, you will understand other three eventually. If you know the dependent origination, not fully, because of this happened. If you know that, if you can understand this, if you can see how the ego is formed or our ego is manifest, now you should know that this is not you or this is not I. This is only the ego. The ego which is identified with something, with what you have, with something what you have. Just think about that. With your child, you are the mother. Then you see your child, you are the mother. When you see your father, you are the mother? Are you the mother? When you see your father, are you the mother? No. Then you are the daughter or the son. How can you change like that? Tell me who you are. Actually, who are you? The mother? Or tell me something fixed. Mother or daughter or wife. Choose one. Can you? Choose one? No, you can't choose one, because how can you choose one? If you choose daughter, and how can you go to your husband? If you choose wife, how can you go to your father? But now you can see, when you associate with someone, then you become someone at that time, because the ego is created and you take the identity. In front of your father, you take the identity of daughter. Therefore, you feel that you are the daughter. With the kid, then you feel that you are the mother. That's why your identity is changed all the time. I want you to apply this into your life. During this week, please apply. When you go to your boss, then you know that. Then you will become an employee suddenly. And when you see your name board on your table, perhaps it says manager or director, then you suddenly become the director of the company. Then when you come to the monastery, you suddenly became upasaka, upasika. That's why you can't have a fixed identity. With that, people want to have big identities, because That's the only way they can be superior. That's why they acquire everything. That's why you have acquired everything. If you don't understand this, you will do more. For nothing, just to be identified with. Apart from that, what use, actually, did you use your wealth? Did you use your every penny? Did you use your education or your title or your degrees, PhDs? You used once to be identified with. Imagine that someone thinks that he is the richest person in the world. Can he use his money? Wealth? He can't. But he uses that title. I'm the richest man in the world. Go through your every property. Go through your every penny. Then you will see, why did I collect these things? Go through your ornaments and jewelry. Then you will see. Ask from yourself, why did I collect these things? What's the use of it? Just to say that I have this. And why do you wear branded clothes? Again, you know the answer. When you wear some clothes, some types of clothes, some branded products, then you feel so superior. You feel something, essentially, when you wear them. That's why you wear them. If it is exclusive, that's better. Limited edition, that's better. Only 5 of us have this. Then you can have a greater identity, superior identity. Businessmen know about this. Therefore, they make brands. They spend a lot not to produce their products. To make their brand. If you want to become a successful businessman, don't make a product. Make a brand. Build a brand. Then you will be. That means make a fool out of this. You can do that because the ego is the most foolish thing in the world. And the mind is the purest thing in the world. But the problem is, the mind is overwhelmed by the ego. Therefore, everyone looks like fools. Otherwise, everyone looks like most noble people in the world. Everybody should be noble because they have the most pure and they have the purest thing in the world. The purest thing, the mind. But it is defiled due to ignorance and attachment, and finally became a big, gigantic fool. So gullible, Can't you see that? When you see an advertisement, a successful person, as you think, a celebrity, comes to the camera and he uses it, whatever it is. Then you see that. You are looking, you means again the ego. The ego is looking for an identity, superior identity. Normal identity is not enough. It needs a superior identity. Then when you see the advertisement and you see the celebrity and he's so popular and now you know that. When you use it, actually eventually, even though you have 2 PhDs, I'm telling you, you still believe all these advertisements, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's time to think about your education. How can they fool you? The ego is so desperate to find an identity, especially a superior identity. Therefore, when the ego sees a celebrity uses it, now the ego thinks that if I can be identified with that, I will also feel the same. Then you trust the product and you buy it and you wear it confidently and you go to the society. What do you expect? That's why I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, it seems no one is intelligent. Everyone can be fooled easily due to the ego. That's why if you buy something, the total cost is equal to material cost plus psychological cost. You pay this amount. This is very big. This is actually, I would say 10%. This is 100%. This is 90. Perhaps this is not 90. This is like 1,500%. Let's assume a piece of art, just a piece of art, a piece of canvas and some colors. Let's say $10. This is 10 million. $10 million. Psychological value. If it is limited edition, psychological value. That celebrity also uses it. Psychological value. When you use it, girls will come towards you, or girls are attracted. Then stupid, I can't say use, I don't use that. I don't want to use that word. Because when I use that word, your ego will be identified with that and you will feel offended. Young people, foolish young people think that will happen, and they will feel so superior, and they will use it. But they will realize that no one will come, no one will be attracted, only perhaps dogs. But to realize that, you have to use that product at least for 2-3 months. Then the businessman can cover his cost and huge profit as well. That is the business world. If you want to become a businessman, you should deceive others. But you can deceive others because of the ego. Therefore, actually, there is a God for businesses, profit. There is a God. That's not Lakshmi. You may have heard about Lakshmi, goddess Lakshmi. She's not the goddess or God for businesses. This is. If you are a businessman, you should offer things to this ego. Because of this, you can deceive others. When you deceive others, others will buy your products. Otherwise, people don't want to buy products with essential need. Sometimes they are not basic needs. You can't deceive me and make me buy anything. Because I have the protection of the Buddha. You can't make me buy 2 robes when I have 1. You can offer me 1,000,000 robes, but you can't make me wear 2. But today, you go home and check your cupboards, closets, then you will see the truth. Then you can check, fool. You can say that. You will see many brands. They all are branded. And you will see many brands. But actually, the only brand is that is the only brand you will see. And however, you had to buy. You saw it, you had to buy it. You had to. You were a slave. You had to. You had to. And you don't wear them, but you had to buy it. Or perhaps you can offer it to someone now. You can say that, I always offer these my clothes to everyone. I'm a good person. Of course, you are a good person. Why did you buy them in the first place? Now you give them, now you offer them to others. Because you don't have enough space. Because still you are equivalent to this. I don't want to use that word. More. You are still perhaps. Therefore, you want to buy many things, you want to acquire many things, you want to be identified with new brands, new jewelries, new titles. Therefore, you need to remove your old things because you don't have enough space. Therefore, actually you have to offer these things to poor people. Actually, poor people are so lucky because others are If you want, you can make it, you can write adjective as well. I don't want to write that. Because of the ego, actually ego is so foolish. Therefore, it needs to be identified with new things. That's why people want to offer things to the poor. But that's a good action and good thing, therefore we should respect that. But if you have enough space, enough storage, perhaps some people will keep their clothes or whatever it is in that, because from time to time they can be identified with those things. Because when something is ancient, when something becomes antique, then again you can be identified with that. That's why some people collect antiques. Then you can say that we have a chair which is 500 years old. Perhaps that is the oldest chair in the world. I have it. Then you are so special. You have seen Guinness records. Longest, highest. Apart from that, I'm going to add another one on behalf of the ego, the most foolish. Don't let this destroy your life, ladies and gentlemen. If you can understand this, you won't destroy your life. Otherwise, life means you don't think about your life, you always think about time, but time is life. You use your time to get a good education. Take a good education, but not to be identified with. Take a good education, because you need an education, because you need to use that. Education is good to live. Then your life will be easier. Therefore, ask your children to learn properly, not for exams. When they learn physics, their life will be very easier. They know how things work. Then they can easily live. Therefore, I want you to teach your children properly, not for certificates. When you take a certificate, you can use it only for one thing, that is to be identified with. But if you have knowledge, you can use it. We have knowledge. We gathered knowledge, but in our lay life, we gathered knowledge as well as certificates, because we wanted to be identified with that. Otherwise, we were nothing. We wanted to create. My father was a principal. Therefore, we use his name to be identified with. I think you also do the same. But if my father were a murderer, how can I use his name then? How would I use his name? I can't. Therefore, then perhaps I would change. That's why people lie. People don't want to be identified with bad things. Then they feel inferior. My father was a principal, therefore we use his name to be identified with. We say principals as children. Then we were treated very well in our village. That's why everybody wants that identity. some lies. Some want to reveal their lies. Some want to hide them. Because they don't want to be identified with those things. Perhaps something bad you have done in your past life, or your past time. You want to forget it. Why? Why do you want to hide your skeletons in the closet? Everybody has skeletons in the closet. Everyone wants to hide the dirt under the rug. Why? You don't want to be identified with it. Then you will feel so inferior. This is the truth. Therefore, if the ego is there, you are restless, ladies and gentlemen. Your memory or your memories will kill you. Because when you remind your memories, you can be happy as well as unhappy. Because with each memory, the ego is identified with it. That's how you feel, I was a bad person. I was a good person. When you feel that I was a good person, you are happy. When you feel that you are a bad person because you have done something wrong, that's normal. But when you remember that, the ego is created and it is identified with that incident, then you will feel so inferior and you can't tolerate that. Then you try to hide. If you can't hide, then you need a psychiatrist. Then you will go to someone, at least go to a church and meet a father and confess and try many things to remove that. But whatever you do, you can't be successful, because if the ego is created, you can't hide anything. It will find something to be identified with. Then tell me, what should we do? You have done other things. There is only one thing is left. You wanted to keep the ego because you didn't know about that, and you wanted to forget your memories. And some people go to psychiatrists or some other doctors and try to remove some part of the memory. Apparently there is a way, by using a current or something, they can remove some part, some parts of your memory. Reason? Why do people do all these things? Because they can't avoid that. When the ego is created, the ego is identified with it. Memory comes. When you see someone, some memory comes to you. How can you stop that? When you see your child, you can remember some sweet things in his childhood. It comes eventually. It comes automatically. You can't stop that. But when you identified with that, let's assume that you have punished him, but something went wrong, and he lost his 2 years because of what you have done. But you didn't want to do that, but you have done. Perhaps you drank from his ears with love, but something happened. He lost his ears. Now when you see your child, you can remember that. How do you feel? Then you have to live with it forever. You have to live with it forever means when the ego is created, and the ego is identified with that situation, that memory. Therefore, you always feel that you have done to that. You have done it. That's how you regret. If you don't like regret, we can eradicate that. Not by forgetting, by eradicating the ego. If you don't like lust, we can eradicate that. If you don't like jealousy, we can eradicate that. If you don't like anger, we can eradicate that. Whatever you want to eradicate, you can eradicate. Whatever you don't like, you can eradicate them by eradicating the ego. Therefore, please try to understand that this is the only thing you should do. If you try other things, it's only a waste of time. And you have been doing that, and you must have experienced this by now. Therefore, let's work out your salvation. The salvation is the eradication of the ego. This is the enemy. That's why I told you from the beginning, this is the enemy, this is the only enemy, this is the only fight, this is the only battle. You need to win this battle. But this is harder. But you all know that. The harder the battle, the sweeter the victory. This battle is so hard. Victory is also so sweet. Therefore, we will fight together. We will help you, but you have to do your own fighting. We will show you the path. We will discuss. We will enlighten you every day when you come here, or when you go to Rajagiriya, or when you come to Sinhalese sermon, whatever. We will show you the path. When you understand that, please start practicing. We want you to start practicing. Because this is not like we gather here not just to pretend that we are Buddhist and we are going to practice the path, we are going to listen to the Dhamma, and we will be good Buddhists. This is not the purpose of this. The purpose is, this must be 100% practical. You came here to attain Nibbana. Then, I came here to show you the path. At the same time, learn and practice. While speaking, I have been practicing. Therefore, this is very useful to me. And it must be very useful to you. Then we all should practice. Therefore, please be practical. Don't take this one as a normal occasion. Let's practice. Let's win. This is about your life. This is not something deceiving. We do something to deceive the society, to show them that we are good people because we need a good identity. Therefore, perhaps we go to temples. We offer things. We offer dane. We do offerings. But this must be very practical. You came here just to attain Nibbana. Therefore, let's practice and let's see the results. When you see the results, then I don't have to force you to move forward. When you see the results, you will eventually go there. Go to your victory. Then I'll see you next week. And please put this into practice. May the blessings of the Noble Triple Gem be with you all. Thank you.